Hello, good morning. Welcome to another episode of Bad Boss with Anya Soto. And today I have such a pleasure to chat with Diana Lowe, which we were chatting and almost missed that the show went
We
live
did.
because we were chatting behind the scenes, and we're so happy to get on with topic on emotional intelligence. So Diane is the CEO of a Blue Light Leadership. It's a leadership development company, focuses on education, training, coaching, emotional intelligence for remote leaders and remote teams. So I am personally so freaking excited to speak because I have so many questions with managers and leaders. How do we lead remote teams?
Oh, so many questions. Well, thank you for having me today. I'm excited
Yes.
to start this, and I am excited to have this conversation. We had a good conversation before.
Yes.
Let's continue it. There's so many ways to lead remote teams, and I think personally it all starts with the heart,
Yeah.
but we can go down that route after.
Yeah.
We
Totally.
can talk
Tell
first.
me why blue light leadership? Because I know as entrepreneurs, we put so much time into like, what should I call my company? Is there a meaning behind blue light?
Yes, there is. There's actually two meanings.
Okay.
So, blue light refers to the light in which the blue light of our computers, of our laptops, of our tablets,
Mhm.
of all the technology around us, in which the environments that we work nowadays, that is very
Mhm.
normal, right? So, that
Yeah.
we're blue light is that exposure. And so, many of us lead from our laptops. We're not only in person, we're hybrid, we have remote teams
Mm,
around the world.
love
But
it.
the other one is a Buddhist reference actually, and blue refers to building capable leaders.
Mm.
So there's a passage in Buddhist sutra, Buddhist teaching, that it talks about like the bluest of the blue, and as you dip your cloth into indigo, it goes bluer and bluer. And that
Mm.
is really about building capable leaders and building a capable network of citizens in the world who can really take on, the challenges of today. So,
I
yeah.
love it. I love.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, people are just like, okay, blue light leadership. People don't have their own business, don't understand the agony it took
Agony.
to come up with the name and the website. Ugh, like
Agony.
yeah, the
Yes.
agony it took. Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, I love the conversation of emotional intelligence. I also love the capability because leading remote team is so different, and you and I are both coaches, facilitators, and we know the amount of work it takes to build that trust and connection remotely versus being in person. I want to jump in and ask you, we'll talk about the bad boss, how to deal with bad bosses, because again, that's what we deal with every day. And especially even with our clients, sometimes we get hired to work with like super toxic leaders. I mean, at
I
least me. I
love
don't
this topic.
know. Yeah,
It's true. I love this topic. So,
I
yes.
deal with them all the time. I'm an expert. But I am actually at Stanford University all week today. And this is why I'm dressed. I'm getting ready for my second day of training. But yesterday I had a couple of private conversations with scientists. And that's why I mean, emotional intelligence and science favorite topic because we really blow their minds with the power of relationships. And this is why I'm like, I'm so excited. So, two questions I have. Let's start with one that was a real challenge that a leader who is a biologist, now she's actually a physicist, a female physicist, which is
Mhm.
so rare in the world. And she brought in a good point. She said, okay, I have a team of 14 people. While I would like to honor their introverted personality and their privacy, a lot of my team members do not have their camera on. And it makes it really hard to build connection, to build that emotional connection, to build trust and camaraderie on a team. And because I do a lot of DNI work, we talked about how do you honor someone's personal preferences,
Mhm.
but also explain the impact that those
Mhm.
preferences can have on a team as a whole. So do you have like, I mean, any comments on like how do we deal with that?
A silver bullet. Let's just like what's the silver bullet to get people to be on screen?
Yeah.
For me, it starts with the quality of the relationship of the person. It is absolutely 100% understandable that sometimes people may not have their camera on. So yes, you and I both know that. honor privacy. However, there have to be expectations that are stated and clearly stated that this is what we do. This is why we do it. And to be a part of this team is what this means. Much like, for example, your scientist or the people who are on her team, much like they live in a family. And I'm not saying work is a family, but it's a type of relationship where in this family, this is how we behave. So that, like your name says, comes down to culture. So really, I would say to that leader, how are you helping that culture really live its values? And then I would look at, from the positive emotion side, I would look at how are your relationships with each of these people?
Yeah.
Right. So building and nurturing that relationship, because it's fine to have some people on your team who you're not very close with, but when they have their camera off, then that starts to erode trust in the whole team. And then you're putting like,
now I'm like, I don't know, are you working? Are you not working? I don't know what you're doing. I don't see your face. I don't see your emotions. I don't see your body language.
And if they're on mute and off, are you even there? Right. So then you have to think about it in terms of their language and speaking in terms of their language. So depending on what kind of scientist, obviously I'm thinking of your old school Petri dish. When you introduce into a culture, literally, it's called a culture of one thing that could hurt that culture, that could be it. So brainstorming, making it a collaborative process. Hey, what do we not want in this culture? And what do we want? And how do we get there? And so there are, as you know, many ways to facilitate that. But really, what the leader probably doesn't want to hear, but it comes down to, is them, right? What environments are they allowing and what aren't they allowing?
Yeah. And I love, that's where I was going. That was kind of like my response, is to have a meeting with the team, right? Because what I see also, I can have an amazing relationship with you as an individual, and that manager is actually very evolved manager and has really good relation with individuals. It's the collective psychological safety, right? That is being kind of like triggered. And to have a team meeting and said, how do we want to be with each other? Like when you mentioned like explicit agreements, what will serve this team? What's okay and what's not okay?
Yes. And what is working really well for us and what makes you feel, and depending on the culture of the business, you may not want to say safe, but what makes you feel valued or what makes you feel like you're being listened to? Yes, seen. And then what about if somebody doesn't want to do that? What should we do with them, right? So thinking through the consequences. The truth is sometimes the leader will need help. They'll need to hire somebody like yourself or like myself outside of their business to facilitate that, because coming from a third party, it's easier for people to open up. So,
I love it. It's my favorite part of being a consultant. And when we go in and I say the things that employees were saying for 6 months, but nobody listened, the external consultant comes in, says this thing, and everybody's like, oh my God, this is so brilliant.
So true.
And the employee who brought me in was like, I've been saying that for 6 months. I'm like, I know, but you don't charge them money. And we do. So it's like they take it from us because we're like, oh, I paid like whatever amount of money for this. This should be like,
it's like opening your ears, turning your eyes on when you have somebody come in. And I think that's the important work, that we do, is that it's very easy, even in a family, to ignore the things you don't like, right? That things that are not working.
Well, my wife tells me all the time this brilliant advice, and I don't listen.
Like, whatever.
And my friend would say the same thing, and I'll come home and I'm like, oh my God. So my friend Lauren, I'm like, Lauren, yesterday we had a chat and she said this thing, and she's like, really? Oh, Lauren said this thing. I'm like,
you're like, and she's like, I've been saying this forever.
I know. So here's another question I had, again, like in my conversation. So thank you so much. I hope some leaders take away, bottom line is, A, build your one-on-one relationships, and B, create some team agreements and explain. I love the context of like, here's why. It's not that everybody should have a camera on. You guys, everybody turn it on or else you're fired. No, here's why. Like, it helps us as a team to build relationships. So if we have even once a week, please make sure you're in an environment, your hair is done, and like you're ready to go on camera. Like, this is like a collective expectation.
That's true. And I think, so the other thing, if we want to like dip into this as a topic, I think another thing that we need to also be aware of as leaders, which is why it's important to choose our words wisely and to
Yeah.
be intentional, is that this can also be a symptom of somebody's mental health.
Yeah.
So we need to also
Mhm.
be, it's not our responsibility necessarily as leaders to be a therapist, but it is our responsibility to make sure our words are nourishing, to make
Yeah.
sure that our words are encouraging.
And
And
our
if,
people are okay.
yeah, and that people around you
Yeah.
are okay. And so that's another part of this, you
I
know?
love this. I love this of like digging kind of like deeper of like why, right? And like what is stopping you from even being on camera, right? Is it that again, do we need to repair some relationships? What is happening at home? What is happening with you? But that's where the one-on-one comes in. And then I feel like
Yeah.
once you have these one-on-ones, then we can bring the group together and say, how do we want to be with each other?
And also explaining exactly what you're saying, explaining it in a language in which they understand. So if we say, oh, well, it's just nice for relationships. And, you know, if you're in your left brain, you're not really caring about the relationships. You're looking at the tasks.
Mhm.
You're looking at like maybe details. So really saying it in their language.
Yeah.
So if we're going to talk about complex equations, one part of our complex equation is that we need to have this plus this equals this. How we do that is, you know, being on
Yeah.
screen so we can see you because we want you here, you
Yeah.
know.
I love that. I love that again, that it's not from a place of punishment and but from a place of I want you to be part of it and every voice matters and we want your contributions and people love seeing, you know, each other, like even if we do it once a week. So it's so powerful. I really appreciate the work you've done with like remote teams because it's so hard, right, to build that team, build the camaraderie. Because again, I'm hearing a lot of leaders say that they have workforce that has actually never worked in a physical space, like
That's
never
right.
did not have that experience, and they don't even know what it could be, which creates a lot of assumptions for them. But also I love talking about like the assumptions and the bias when teams again are new teams, they're matrix teams, some people have been, some people have never worked. We make so many assumptions about each other. So do you have any wisdom around making up stories and assumptions versus emotional intelligence?
Oh, so many. How long do we have? So, yes, we will fill in the story and we will say, oh, Anya's from Poland. People in Poland are like this, right?
Yeah.
So that's one part of our DEI work for all of us,
Yeah.
not just for certain people or this.
Generalizing.
Everybody needs
Stereotyping.
to say like, oh, well, let me know that I feel this or that I think this, and let me have a different experience. That's
Yeah.
probably the hardest thing. You've got to be next level, next level. But really, it's about getting to know people. And the important thing is that when things are presented to you in a way that you feel like, oh, see, I knew they didn't do that, or I knew they couldn't do that, or right.
Confirmation bias. Let me find another confirmation.
Exactly. So your biases are stacking up and you're saying like, yes, I told you people from this part of the world, they're slow or they can't do this. Or so that's when, and you and I both know this, that's when a coach is really important.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they can poke holes and say, well, is that true? Or
Yeah.
what other evidence? Or what are you missing that you
Yeah.
don't know?
What are you
So
not seeing? What is their perspective on things, right? Like kind of like the third entity. It's like, oh, interesting. What's happening here? Yeah.
So I had a client who, and all names and things are changed, so everyone's safe. But I had a client who was a business owner, worked with somebody from around the world, never met them. And because of where they were in the world, this person had made an assumption about them, right? So, oh, they're never online, they're never doing this, they're always right, the always and the nevers. If you catch yourself saying always and nevers, that's when you start to need to poke at that, right? So if something's always like this or never like that, poke at it.
Is it always? Is it never? Yeah.
So then we started looking at the cultural aspect of that relationship. So that's where we can start to engage our emotional intelligence. What are our emotions telling us? It's either making us angry or happy or sad or frustrated, whatever the emotions we're feeling. And that's when we have to start to say, okay, this information has something to tell us. So what does it have to tell us? And we worked out that in this country in particular, where he was, where his colleague was working, they had a relationship between masculine and feminine, and they had a relationship between older and younger. So what he was looking for, which he thought was very normal in this culture, was not the
Yes.
same in that culture. So there
Yes.
was a little bit of cultural blindness. Totally okay, but that's what creates the story.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Right. Versus how do we clear those assumptions, right?
Coaching. Short answer, silver bullet, coaching.
Coaching. How do
Coaching.
we coaching?
Coaching.
How do coaching?
So, and then
why I'm like, yeah, sometimes. And what's important about coaching is people like it's good to do this work privately in a confidential, safe space to be able to say, I mean, we're all biased and I have blind spots. Show me what am I not seeing?
that's why we need each other.
Yeah.
That's why it's important. And that's why one of the values of my company is global citizenship. Because what we do, just because I work in America doesn't mean I don't affect other countries.
Exactly.
And when we have remote teams, when we have products that go around the world, we need to be globally responsible for our citizenship and think about it from other angles, right? So this is a really important thing that we stop thinking about like just our locale, and that we actually take it bigger.
Well, the impact, right? The ripple effect that we have and our works have. I'm noticing I'm like, we have about 3.5 minutes left. And the most important part is dealing with a bad boss who doesn't have emotional intelligence, who doesn't have self-awareness, who doesn't realize the impact their works have on the team, who says stupid things that are hurtful. How do you deal with those bosses that have no emotional intelligence or very low EQ?
So there's a myth here that some people don't have EQ. So we all have EQ, especially if you're an adult. There are certain people who demonstrate it less or have to mimic it. We won't go into that. That's like a therapy sort of point. But here's the thing. Whoever we're working with in a certain environment, they will have EQ. So maybe your boss has EQ with his peers, his boss, her boss, whoever they may be, that maybe they have EQ. But EQ itself cannot be decided by you. EQ has to be calibrated in an environment, right? So you and I might have a great relationship. We might really get each other, but introduce another person into that, we may behave completely differently. Right. So we may not, and then that person feels like, oh, well, they're not being great to me, or they're not noticing what I need. So the key is and if we're talking about like managing up, is to notice.
Huge.
Yes. So to notice what difficulties you're having with your boss, and then silver bullet, get a coach. Silver bullet.
Oh my God. Get a coach. Great advice. Get a coach.
Get a coach.
Stop. Get a coach.
Because I've worked with a woman who had a boss who really didn't care about her, right? So what we had to do is we had to talk in terms of what he did care about. He cared about getting the job done. He cared about XYZ. She was speaking to him in her language that her team was not doing well. They weren't happy. He didn't care about that. So really what we need to do is, if I'm German and I'm going to France, I need to speak a little French so that when I go there, people understand me. And that's really what we're doing when we're managing up.
Speak their language, meet them where they are.
Meet them where they are. And they're not going to be perfect. But here's the thing. Having a bad boss is a blessing, because it allows you to be even sharper as a leader, because you go, I'm never going to do that to somebody. And if you catch yourself doing it, hopefully you correct yourself, right? So
it's like, I'll never become my mother.
Now that's the next episode, in which we will talk about, and that will involve a therapist and a coach.
I love it.
And maybe an exorcism. We'll see.
Yeah. Oh my God. But it's like, I love talking, because people are like, well, work is different from life. Yesterday, again, I was in this workshop and this gentleman asked me, he's like, are we talking about work? Or because we were talking about trust, building trust, right? Trust and psychological safety. And he said, well, are we talking about work, or are we talking about life? And I'm like, oh, that's interesting that those are two separate worlds for you.
It's true. And you know what? People behave differently in those worlds.
And I asked them, I said, okay, like we had a group of like 35 scientists. And I said, who feels that who you are at work or how you build relationships at work is not how you are in life? And at least more than half of the room were like, me. So I'm like, where is that integration? I understand this, but when we talk about values, the same thing comes up, right? People say, well, Anya, are you talking about like values at work or values in life? And I say, well, for me, I consider myself an integrated human being. It's the same. I value authenticity at home and I value it at work. I value integrity at home and like, for me, they're not two different components. Like, I don't know, just who I am is who I am, no matter where I show up.
And so so if we talk like quickly emotional intelligence,
Yes.
the old paradigm of work, of leave your emotions at home, I believe created that this is who I am at home and this is who I am at work.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have to be this way at work. And for anybody under the impression that in the past we didn't show emotion at work, hashtag not true.
We just shut down, left.
We just shut down. We drank more. We smoked more.
We blamed.
All the emotions still there, just pushed into a little box, which came out at home or wherever, and not in a good way either. Yeah. So that's where I think we have this paradigm where I have to be somebody at work and I have to, like, professional is this way and then not professional is this way. Yeah. And I think what you're finding is, you're right. Our younger generations, they're not somebody different at home and they're not somebody different at work. If they're a jerk at home, they're going to be a jerk at work. Now, the key is not to call them a jerk, number one. And number two, to get to know them so that you work best.
Rewind.
Rewind.
Don't call them a jerk.
Okay. Don't call anybody a jerk. If you're calling people stupid at work, you need to look at yourself and get a coach.
Silver bullet. Get
a coach.
I feel like you and I could talk for like 5 hours, and maybe we'll do a whole other episode on like engineers and scientists. And again, I don't want to generalize people, but there is definitely a strong belief that we're now kind of trying to shift also that paradigm, like you said, that emotions don't belong to work. And why are we even talking about care at work? I have people who care about me at home. I don't need people to care about me at work. And all of I'm like, there's so much that we can discuss. But thank you so much for this kind of like an introduction. We'll probably do another episode again together. I would love to do more work. I think there's so much work to do for all of us, and just like love the specialty you have specifically with remote teams. So anybody who's going to be watching the show, please reach out to Diana and just talk about how you do need a coach, obviously. And sometimes a facilitator to create some team agreements. If you're leading a remote team and you have never done that before, get a facilitator who can walk you through the process of creating those like explicit, collective, collaborative team agreements so that everyone is on the same page and everyone understands why.
Yeah.
Adults need to know why. They're not children. It's not like, here's what we're going to do. Why should I do it? Why now? Why me? Why with this team?
And especially if you're working with people who are, I would say, like knowledge workers, like they know stuff, they care about knowing stuff. That's where they need the why, 100%. So we speak their language, right?
Exactly.
For me, I don't need to know why. I just want to do things and have fun. But I know other people need that.
Yeah, and please don't forget, get a coach.
Get a coach. Get a coach.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really enjoyed, and I had so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.